welcome to Talk the Thrones. We are back to talk about House of the Dragon, Episode 1, A Son for a Son. My name is Chris Ryan. I am your host here today. Joanna Robinson, senior Ringer staff writer, and the worst babysitter in all of King's Landing. It's Mallory Rubin.
Wow.
Guys, here we are. We are back. Before we get into the show, a little bit of admin. I just want to mention that on June 25th, the three of us will be doing a live show for Talk the Thrones.
Join us.
At the El Rey Theater in Los Angeles. Go to the El Rey website or go to theringer.com/events to get tickets. We would love to see you there.
Special guests?
Who knows?
Could be.
Winged beasts, could they be arriving? Guys, I'm so excited to talk about this episode. Joanna.
Yes.
Did the end of this episode mark something of a throwing Bran from the window moment for House of the Dragon?
Wait, what are you talking about? Something happened? Yeah, I mean, well, this is a huge moment that a lot of book readers have been waiting for sure. And not to overstate it in terms of what's going to happen next, but this is how George puts it in the book, right? For both the blacks and greens, blood called to blood for vengeance.
Is this the
Very chill.
Things are
light
about to get
touch with the pros is what we go to him for?
things are about to get real personal.
Now, were you more taken back by the child murder in this episode, or the sight of the wall and the North and a Stark?
We're home. We heard the words "winter is coming" uttered on a television program on our screens. And the only thing that is better than being here with Joanna Robinson, first of her name, and Chris the Magnanimous.
Oh, thanks.
Heading back up north, seeing a shocking, horrific conclusion to the episode. Did either of those things shock me quite as much as Kristen Cole abandoning the cap to stick his head into Alicent's crotch instead? I don't know.
It's less than 3 minutes. We're already on to oral
here we are.
sex.
We're already here.
People
Mallory.
come here for a reason.
Yes.
Why don't I break down the episode? Shall we?
Oh my God, the Chris Ryan recaps.
This has been fact-checked and spell-checked by Mallory Rubin, so there will be no mistakes in this.
I refuse to accept any blame or culpability for Chris getting character names wrong.
Let's get into the episode breakdown. Is that the Stark family music I hear? We begin season 2 with some classic Stark bars about being cold and doing your duty as Jack Valerian, aka Jaceres.
Jace.
Continues his
Jackie
whistle-stop tour through Westeros to garner support for his mom's claim to the throne, John McCain style. Just taking that bus, you know?
Interesting comp. Okay.
While chatting with Craig Stark at the top of the wall, Jack receives
We're going
news-
with Craig Stark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and Craig are already on Craig Stark terms. That's nice. One
He
scene
receives
in.
news that his brother Lucerys has died, so maybe take it down a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Get
and-
into a more somber headspace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucerys dies with a career record of 0 wins and 1 loss in dragon fights against Aemon Targaryen.
Is that bad?
Well, I mean,
Is
it's a
that
small
not what you
sample
want?
size, so
okay.
the advanced analytics guys need to pour over the data. Back on Dragonstone, Rhaenys and Daemon argue about load management for their dragons and the best way to maintain their naval blockade currently choking King's Landing. Daemon wants to toast a dragon and a kid,
Normal.
but Rhaenys wants her winged vehicle to get some electrolytes.
Yeah.
The important thing to know
Gotta
is
gorge.
that Daemon says the name of the episode, and he is not going to let that go.
No.
I heard Bernice, but I know he meant Rainy.
I said Rhaenys, didn't I?
Maybe.
Recovery is on the mind of many HOTD characters. Rhaenyra is wandering around in mourning, apparently without any foaming cleanser. And Corrales is finally up and at him. I'm so happy for that guy, walking around the docks and giving thanks to a guy named Alan for pulling him out of the water.
Yeah. And is Alan spelled exactly the way that you anticipated it would be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the common spelling for
Yeah,
Alan.
very normal.
At King's Landing, Alicent is getting head. Helena is having premonitions and Aegon just wants to party all the time. Seems like life during wartime to me. During a small council meeting, we see some of the competing impulses of the Greens. Alicent wants peace, Aegon wants to have fun, and Jaehaerys just wants to ride a Lannister, while Aemon wants his blood, and Larys wants everyone to know he is the worst HR guy in history. Great to see him back in the mix.
You wearing socks and shoes today? Larys is wonderful.
Yeah.
Double pair of socks. He's also got his eye on Otto Hightower's job. Now, if you're anything like me, you spent the last 2 years dying to know what happened to Misaria.
Thought about her every second. Thought about her every second.
Sleepless nights.
Yeah.
Daemon nabs the demois of Westeros as she tries to flee. I don't know why I'm laughing at my own jokes. He presses
That's
her.
how you know we're back.
Yeah, that's
Chris laughing at
the
his own
classic
jokes.
CR
He
move.
presses her about weaknesses in the King's Landing security apparatus, which he will exploit in order to satisfy Rhaenyra, who has moved on to the 8th stage of grief, pure vengeance. There's some funerals. There's some candle lighting. It's all very sweet. And then there is an excruciating 15-minute sequence of Daemon hiring hitmen to get that son for a son.
Did you actually like get the stopwatch out?
I did clock it.
Mentally, yes. Two dudes named Blood and Cheese.
Yeah.
I met them at a
Can you
Boston
start calling
bar
us
once.
that? By the way, we've been meaning to ask.
Wait, but which is which?
I think I'm Cheese.
Yeah,
Yeah.
blood for me.
They're assigned to bring Daemon the head.
No, I would never kick a dog. Sorry. I don't want to be Cheese. I would never kick a dog. Continue.
Is that the worst thing that happens
Yes,
in this
it's
episode?
the worst
I
thing
think
that happens
it's
in this
slightly
episode.
worse crimes.
Okay.
They're supposed to get the head of Aemon Targaryen. What happens next
Oops.
is sad, gross, and an excellent use of sound effects, and will change the course of this show. They kill a son, just the wrong one, executing Jaehaerys in front of his mother. Now they've gone and done it, and that is the recap.
Man, there's only one you. There are a lot of people competing for the Iron Throne, but there's only one Chris Ryan.
I want to start big
Chris
picture.
the Dragonheart.
Thank you so much. Your support means everything. I want to start big picture, just for TV viewers.
Yeah.
Did this episode feel different? Because obviously it picks up pretty much right at the end of season 1, action-wise.
Yeah.
But did you feel any differences in the storytelling?
Well, I'm going to speak in the parlance of The Watch, a podcast that you do co-host. And there's big changes behind the scenes. Big changes behind the scenes.
Yeah.
At House of the Dragon, because Miguel Sapochnik, who was sort of the director-producer for season 1, is out. Alan Taylor is in, and Alan Taylor directed like your favorite movie, right? Terminator Genesis.
It is.
Yeah.
It holds the whole thing
tier
together.
stuff.
Yeah. But he's also, I mean, he directed Baelor, one of the great Game of Thrones episode where Ned Stark lost his head. Spoilers for Game of Thrones season 1.
A lot of decapitation in this.
And also, really recently, the Interview with a Vampire pilot, which is one of the best episodes of television.
Great pull. I never did that.
Yeah, so good. So Alan Taylor's back. He's very well versed in Game of Thrones. And something that I noticed was, especially in the small council scene, there's that vignetting that you get from anamorphic lenses that have been like really popular in television.
Yeah.
They didn't really use those in season 1. So we're getting those like blur. If you were like, is there something wrong with my TV? No, that's
Yeah, Shogun did
intentional.
that a
Yeah,
little bit too,
a lot
yeah.
of Shogun vignetting. What about you, Mel?
I've got a quick triple header for you here. 3 things. 1, new opening credits, right? We've
Yes.
got to remark on the new opening credits.
Yeah.
We will probably go
Which I
frame by
learned when
frame.
you said new opening credits.
Thread by thread.
Yeah.
Thread by thread
On
on
our deep dive.
our
Yeah.
House of Our Deep Dive on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. The hand turns loom, you know, dragons of flesh weaving dragons of thread. Helena prophecy was one of the very like intriguing lines of season 1, and to kind of lean into that imagery for the new credits while also giving us this literal tapestry of Targaryen history. What are the harbingers? You know, portents and signs, signs and portents. That was really cool to see.
The blood's still here. It's just not
Dripping
murky,
down,
CGI,
yeah,
unintelligible blood. Yeah.
And then just widening the map, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when we think of opening credits, we think of the map in the original Game of Thrones series. And like you mentioned the North already, we're not just going to be in King's Landing, Dragonstone, and Driftmark this season. We're going to be out in more seats with more houses.
They talk about all those different places.
Otto's got a
where they're doing the battle
whiteboard
map. Yeah,
behind
exactly.
them, right? They're sketching out all of these different characters who are going to come into the mix and the places we're going to go. So that's exciting for people. And relatedly, you mentioned already, Chris, like we pick up right where season 1 left off.
Yeah.
We can never stop mentioning how many years season 1 covered, right? We moved through, in essence, 3 decades of canon in 10 episodes of television. And so to pick up, we get that like, she's been gone for days line from Daemon about Rhaenyra. And I think that will just be like orienting and mooring and very refreshing for viewers to know that we're like, all right, we're going day by day, week by week here, not like, oh my God, there was a 10-year jump between episodes.
Yeah.
That's very welcome.
I noticed the pace. It just felt like scenes were like anecdotally, like I would have, I don't know, stopwatch. Felt like they were moving through.
Until we
I
got
thought
to
you
child
said you
murder.
had a stopwatch.
Well, the
Yeah.
the child murder. I
You're
was
like,
just
what's quicker, carving
my
through a
brain.
6-year-old's head or like
Yeah.
carving my Thanksgiving turkey?
JK.
Wow.
I did. That's not a hobby of mine. Anyway, I
part?
thought it just felt like we were already moving.
Yeah.
If the major criticism I think people had of the first season was while really effective and important to building character and understanding this Viserys and this father figure that looms over this whole thing, that it felt like you started the show twice, and now it really feels like we are rocking and rolling. Mal, I want to start a little bit with the wall that you brought up.
Yeah.
Speaking of a swift pace, just zoom
Yeah.
through.
Why
the north.
did we start there? Like, why is that like a breadcrumb for fans, or is that an essential part of the story, you think?
All of the above. I think there are like actually a lot of things to hit here, given how relatively compact and succinct of a scene this was. And I think that we probably had, for book readers, a shared sensation of like absolute euphoria. And then, oh wow, Jace left the North quickly. Like that was zippy. Yeah. But if you remember back in season 1, we open with the prologue in the Great Council, and then we get this like card, right, setting the stage for us, and then it morphs into 172 years since Daenerys. And it's like, right, this makes sense. You're hooking it directly to a tether that is familiar to people from Game of Thrones. And so there's that here too, and I know you have thoughts on what that did to you emotionally, spiritually, mentally, right, philosophically, all of it. So I'll let Joe talk about that part. I was, of course, elated because, like, the North is just, I mean, Game of Thrones fans love it, right? And that was a thrill.
Like, what went through your body when you heard the Stark theme that opens?
I was, like, quivering like a raven flying on that late summer wind.
And then every time you heard duty in the Northern accent, like...
Fantastic. I mean, everything about this like was just bliss for Thrones fans.
Okay.
We have a lot to cover inside of the scene.
I want to ask 2 follow-ups.
Yeah.
And I understand that you guys are going to probably get really deep into this for the...
Oh, we'll be going beat by beat, word by word.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oath by oath.
This may be a basic question, but who was in the elevator? Like, because...
Yeah, this is your guy, Craig.
Craig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you know him.
Your guy,
Craig.
Jack, and your guy, Craig. This is Jace, Rhaenyra's eldest son, and he is there with Cragen Stark, who Chris will be calling
Craig.
And he is the Wolf of the North. He's the Lord of Winterfell.
Okay. Is that what you want to be called? If we're blood and cheese, are you the Wolf of the North, Chris?
Wolf of the Mid-Atlantic? Yeah.
If you remember at the end of season 1 when Luke ventured off on his ill-fated trip to Storm's End, R.I.P., tough one still, we're all in mourning, and Jace was going to the Eyrie and to Winterfell. In the book, he also hits White Harbor. He visits the Manderleys. And so this is like, one of the things that really struck me in this scene is that we see that Jace is good at this, which I think is important. And Rhaenyra was like, remember the season 1 finale, you just like 2 bros, 2 young dudes, hit it off, you'll have better luck than I would. And you kind of see how Jace knows how to navigate a circumstance like this, diplomacy, friendship, etc. The pact of ice and fire. Amazing.
We didn't quite see that though.
No,
like,
I've got gray beards I can send you, right?
That's true, but like what we will say is that book fans were hoping this would be a longer sequence.
Yes.
Right? In the book, they like drink together, hunt together, train together. They were boys together. They swore an oath of brotherhood together. And in this, they took an elevator ride together.
Right, and then he gets an email.
You
that's
ride the
like,
winch
guess
at the
what,
wall,
man?
though.
Your brother's dead.
You're good for life.
Okay, briefly, what did you think, like, what do I need to know about the Torrhen Stark and the Conqueror, like, history stuff that gets mentioned? Because as a casual viewer, I'm watching that and I'm like, I feel like this is important, but I don't know why.
I mean, it's a big moment for book readers, too.
Yeah. Torrhen is known as the king who knelt.
Yeah.
Because...
the title you want.
I mean, the thing that I've always liked about the king who knelt, and this was actually at the Trident in the books, like this is during the conquest, Aegon's conquest. And so I think that's the big, to me, takeaway of this entire sequence is like linking it to the conquest, which links it to Aegon's dream, the Song of Ice and Fire that Viserys shares with Rhaenyra in the first season. We learn in the season finale, stop naming all of your kids Aegon. That would be
That's the one note.
a helpful note that we could pass along to the Targaryens, but it's a little late for that. And so, like, when, you know, of course, when we hear a character anywhere in Thrones, but certainly in the North talk about duty, we think of Jon, the Song of Ice and Fire incarnate. We think of, like, Maester Aemon up at the Night's Watch. Love is the death of duty, a line we love to return to in reference in Thrones. So duty is a key touch point for Thrones fans. But for Jace, he walks up to the top of the wall. He hears Cragen Stark say, Jaehaerys and Alicent, their dragons would not fly beyond it.
Right.
The oath that I have to the North, the North has an oath that is older and more important than anything we owe to the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
And so Jace has not yet received, we have not seen Jace receive this
doesn't know the
information
prophecy.
from Rhaenyra.
And
we will remind people that this is a show invention. This is like not in the books at all. But our assumption is that as Rhaenyra's heir, Jace will receive this information from her at some point. And so to me, the main takeaway was like, what will this trip mean for him now that he's been up there
and
heard about death marching on the wall, right? What's beyond there?
Looking out and being like, oh, it's just savages, it's just weather. And
we didn't
like,
build this for savages.
Yeah. The King Torrhen was the last king of the North until Robb Stark comes along, right?
Okay, great.
So like the last king, and then he's like, never mind, let's unite the kingdoms. And the implication here is that they did it because Aegon told them about the prophecy of Ice and Fire. And that's a big thing for book readers. Well, Mallory and I like dig way into that, but that's something that even like book readers didn't quite know.
Okay, that's good. So let's take that book reader framework. And I do want to ask about the final scene in the episode, which is obviously this drawn out murder of Jaehaerys.
Yeah.
In my casual kind of scholarship here, it turns out they actually like kind of soft pedaled it in the show versus the way it is in the book. Like it's much more violent, sexually violent, and like grotesque, right?
Yeah, so Alicent is there.
Yep.
In the books.
In the books, Alicent is there. They tie her up. There's another child there, a 2-year-old there.
This is the big one for me.
Yeah.
Malor.
Malor, the 2-year-old's there. They do threaten sexual violence to like, you know, the 6-year-old girl that's there. But the big difference is that Helena, in this one, they're like, which one is the boy? Which, as they say in the episode, they could have figured out themselves.
Yeah.
So that's just like
tough for first episode back. All that. Yeah.
But sawing off the kid's head
has a limit.
is fine.
Even Game of Thrones has a limit.
But like in the book, they have Helena pick which of her 2 boys, the 2-year-old, the 6-year-old, she wants them to kill.
Helena's
and then
choice, as it were.
Exactly. Meryl Streep wishes, and then they pick the opposite.
Right.
Further traumatizing her if she weren't already completely traumatizing. So like they did oddly soften.
I know.
This.
I feel like it's going to really make us sound like sociopaths.
Absolutely.
To say blood and cheese, wildly scintillating and horrifying television, but like. Kind
they
of
have a point?
tame,
Yeah.
Relatively speaking. I think Helena in the book picking Malor.
Yes.
And then she's saying, you hear that little boy, your mama wants you dead, and then kill Jaehaerys.
Malor's 2. He's not going to remember it.
Oh, man. It's just, I mean, it's all so harrowing. And I think on the one hand, there's like a level of processing this in real time where you're like, this is just the most horrific thing imaginable, which it is. And I think that we should talk about what this is going to mean for the story moving forward and what kinslaying means in this world. Because something like that we talk about a lot is a recurring through line in Westeros, in the text, no man is as accursed as the kinslayer, right? And so this is a response. A son for a son is a response, of course, to an act of kinslaying. But like Aemond the kinslayer, this becomes a stain that you can't shake off.
But the major key difference, and this sort of helps soften potentially Daemon's character, is that the original like instruction from Daemon in the show is go get Aemond. He's the one who killed.
He's also like he's the one with one eye.
You can't miss him.
Can't miss him. They all have the same haircut.
He's got a
and
flat
lot of
iron
similar
routine.
names.
Like you'll know him when you see
It's
him.
impossible to get good help anymore. You know? Like, it's just like maybe he has to do it himself.
But in the book, like it seems like the toddlers were always the aim. And then they did this thing that they did in season 1 that I actually really love, which is when Blood and Cheese are like, okay, and what's plan B if we can't find the Legolas with the eye patch?
Yes.
And then they just cut off, and we can all at home decide whether or not Daemon said, find a toddler, find the nearest toddler, but they cut it off the same way they did in season 1.
It reminded me exactly
Air for
of
a
this,
day,
which I know is one of your favorite things to like noodle on with Daemon's character. Did he, when Viserys was like, did you say this?
Yeah.
Did you toast my dead child by saying an air for a day? And that just felt so intentional on the show's part to pull away so that we have to fill in that space in our minds. And my assumption is that most House of the Dragon fans will say Daemon either said something very specific like that or said, kill any son you can.
Find a
Make
blonde.
sure you get someone.
Sure. Yeah.
It seems very unlikely that he would have said, if you can't find Aemond,
Just
head right back out the passages and try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
That just doesn't seem likely.
Correct.
But I think it is impossible. Obviously, he's doing this in response to Rhaenyra returning,
And be like,
standing at the painted table and saying, Aemond, I want Aemond. This is not what Rhaenyra wanted.
Okay,
There's just no way that this is what Rhaenyra wanted. Look at how she is in mourning for her own child. And we have to remember, like, Helena is Rhaenyra's half-sister. Right? And this is just like a horrific thing. And Rhaenyra is grieving her own son. So to take away a son in this capacity, Daemon, you just gotta be more precise with the instructions. And like...
Okay, so it's don't name all your children Aegon. And if you're gonna hire 2 would-be assassins, just be very specific about which blonde
Make them
they're
check
allowed
in.
to kill.
Let's talk a little bit about some stuff outside of this last scene, right? Joe.
Yeah.
It was very cool to be back in this world. Who was the character that sort of leapt off the screen for you, and why was it Aegon?
I would really appreciate if you could use his correct title, which is Aegon the Dragon Cock, the Untamable Beast.
Yeah.
That would be my preference.
He's got away with branding.
No one knows what magnanimous means. It was a very amazing moment in the episode.
What about like shrugging and saying cunts in the small council meeting? That also
That was
great.
my favorite, like him
Death
flopping
with a turn of
down and
phrase.
like
Yeah.
cunts. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Glencarney is doing so much good work for Aegon in this episode.
Yeah.
And rewatching the end of last season, he only got a couple episodes to make an impression. And even then, like, he was quite fun when he's fighting Aemon in the street and he bites him. When he and Alicent, he gives Alicent his version of I don't want it, like I don't want to be king on the way to being crowned. So the fact that he like didn't want it, she gives him this speech about your father loved you, he left you this dagger, he wanted you to do it. And so we see Aegon actually kind of trying to be king, less so in the small council meeting when he's
very distracted by the small ball.
Jaehaerys.
No, but when he gets out in front of the
distracted.
people, he's like, let's get these smithies paid, man.
Let's get you your goats.
Happy to
sheep,
give you
whatever.
your sheep back.
Yeah.
You're worried about your salt. Happy to let you know that my battle intention is to burn the blockade. So you needn't worry.
But like Aegon sitting, the other quote that we love to talk about we love to talk about many quotes from this book, but this idea that Aegon had all of the sort of pieces of official pieces of office, right? He has the crown, he has the throne, he was, sworn in the dragon pit, all of that. So to see him just sort of splayed on the throne, this very important seat of power that Rhaenyra will kill many people to try to get, and he's just sort
getting
of
drunk
like,
with his mates.
He's just a bro being a guy with his
Just the Zen shortage hit hard, like those guys are just laid out.
I thought that was really notable too, like the way that his relationship to Rule has evolved, because so much of it came from, now we saw Aegon do horrific things in the first season, but there was this real aura of insecurity, right?
Yes.
Like
It's
my
still
father
here.
had, but my father had his whole life to change his mind, and he didn't.
Right.
So you're telling me this, and like, it is fascinating that one of the people who was most reluctant to believe that in season 1 is the person who it directly impacts the most. And so to see him take the petitions, to see him like decide when he needs to heed Otto's counsel or push back and say, this is the thing I'm gonna do. How is he interacting in a little like side chat with Larys? When can he sniff out when somebody is manipulating him and seeking to like work their own agenda or actually giving him counsel that would like benefit him? I thought, obviously that our time with Jaehaerys is brief, right?
Well,
but his desire to bring him to the small council.
But that's the only thing. I will just say, I think Tom Glencarney is amazing. His charisma and performance.
Are you making a case for Aegon as a dad?
No, but like in terms of how he's thinking about Rule, he's like, I gotta teach him to be prepared.
They
for
had
this.
very little time to be like, actually, Aegon cares about his kids, which is something that they forgot to establish in season 1.
But I don't. I would counter that.
Aegon actually cares about one kid.
Yes, because he goes over and he sees Jaehaerys and he's like, oh, you're not
that
really,
one.
I have nothing to say to you and I have no interest in engaging. He just wants his son because he's going to be the heir. And so he's thinking about what his legacy as a ruler would be, which was just not a part of his. He literally says to Aemon in the first season, like, I'm not suited for it.
Yeah. You mentioned the person who jumped off the screen for me, actually, who was my favorite Foot Locker employee, Larys. I love the fact that he is like consolidating like soft power. So he's basically replaced the support staff for Alicent in the palace
with all of his people.
All of his.
Were you ready to say goodbye to Talia in this
I know.
fashion?
Should we do like 10 minutes of silence on this show for that?
And then move into the Misaria
Can you do a little like impromptu in memoriam, Talia?
Should we get bagpipes out? So he basically replaces Alicent's support staff with his own spies, ostensibly. I have a question about that scene with her in the bathtub, by the way, but I'll get back to that.
I'm excited.
Well, she just only washes one body part?
I
And I was
don't
like,
think she's going to stop there. I think that what they're
For
trying to...
Kristen's sake, I hope that's not true.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. I think that...
Oh my God.
what's happening with Larys there is that he indicates to Alicent that he definitely knows that she was with Kristen Cole when he tried to see her,
Yes.
right?
Before the small council to
Right.
check in.
Yeah.
You were
And he's like,
indisposed?
I've got all my people watching you. So she's in the bath, she's completely exposed, and she's surrounded by Larys's people. Larys, who makes her show him her feet.
Yes.
And she's just like, get out of here. And she feels so violated and watched and like filthy about that she just like obsessively scrubs one shoulder. But I think she does that to the entire
I think
rest of
like
her.
I don't want Larys's people spying on me while I bathe is obviously part of the text, but it also made me think of, in season 1 when Viserys and his increasingly gaping and festering sores is being cleansed by the staff.
You love a sore.
Love a festering sore in my television program, and he dismisses that.
Yeah.
And Alicent takes over, and so it also it's like the show is really deft at little things like that, where characters leave us and people grow apart and they make new alliances and new relationships and they have new agendas. But those little things can port you back over like years and years of canon to a moment when like a much younger Alicent, who was in a situation she didn't want to be in and was working her way through, still had like that, like, what was that relationship like? It makes you think of that, and then what stemmed from it, right?
Yeah.
Because Alicent's relationship with all of these characters, it's like, in some ways that, and obviously her relationship with Rhaenyra, but all of the other relationships that they then forge with the people around them, like that's the skeleton of the show. Everything else is like stuck on top of that.
But like very crucially here, like the fact that she is very done with Larys, very like apparently, like she is no longer getting her like.
And he's kind of like, it's getting increasingly difficult to like schedule you.
Right.
Like,
and so that's why he like latches on to Aegon. He's like, and at the end of last season, Larys is always doing this. He's like, who can I ally with? Can I possibly ally with everyone? At the end of last season, Otto is like, hey, I noticed you spent a lot of time with my daughter, maybe looking at her feet or something like that.
Those hours cannot in the end benefit you. One episode later with Larys, because they're not in episode 10, he's like,
you got to get
fuck Otto.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, and he's the one who brought Otto back to be Hand of the King. So he's just sort of like, that is Larys' survival mode, is just like, who can I latch onto? Who can I whisper to and promise them, that I will boost their power. And so now he's latched onto Aegon for now.
And then to Otto's credit, or at least in an interesting piece of parallel story, like it's like Otto going to Aemond and being like, we're going to get you your blood, but we're going to do it the way that at my pace.
One thing on the Larys front, though, that I do feel like compelled to note, because obviously he's like hardcore Littlefinger coded, right? And we have the like always keep your foes confused Littlefinger ideology in our minds, right?
Stuff, right?
The bulk of our exposure to Larys and the way that he works and manipulates people and how ready we should not forget that in episode 6 of season 1, Larys kills his own father and brother.
Listen,
and then just sits down with Alicent and is like, this was what you wanted, right? Let me know if you need anything else before business hours conclude. So I'm curious to see how Alicent responds to this, because you're right, like there's a palpable, visceral change that it's apparent to her that he's like, something's different.
Yeah.
I'm on to you. What will he do when he finds out about her relationship with Kristen? But what will she do knowing that he is like watching her? Like that's something that she should clock, I think. And I'm curious to see if that happens.
So now the two people who know about her and Kristen are Helaena, presumably.
I think Otto knows.
Otto.
When she walks into the small council chamber with Kristen, Otto gives them a look, and I'm like, I think Otto knows. He might have perhaps smelled something. Can I say that on the Aemond front, my actual favorite line of this episode is, as you recall, you may or may not recall, season 1 ends with Aemond and his dragon chomping a child, a smaller dragon.
It happens.
The caprice of youth is how Otto sums it. Oh, the caprice of youth.
Yes.
Don't worry about it. It's the caprice of youth. But there is, what is the line that you love to quote most that Otto says about Aemond?
That rogue Aemond? Have you heard of him, lads?
I have heard of him.
Worth 1,000 times the price he paid. That's how Otto sums up
winning Vhagar to our
winning
side.
Vhagar to our side.
So he's like
the drift mark.
He has to handle and pander a bit to Aemond because Aemond has the biggest dragon.
There was a lot of attention drawn to that too. Not just like Vhagar, but even like Daemon, when he's setting up Blood and Cheese, is like, if you do find him, like he's a pretty formidable fighter. Aegon's like, he's my best sword. Because Alicent is like, why are you here? Aemond, why did you come to the small council meeting? You don't have a seat at this table. You're not welcome. And the way that the conversation between Alicent and Otto about how Otto is cutting out her knees with the boys was so fascinating, because there's this like, how are they all talking, all of them, Aegon, Alicent, Otto, about Aemond, about what he represents. We see Aemond and Kristen like plotting in secret, and Otto comes in and is like, I really need you to check in with me as Hand of the King. But Alicent going to her father and saying, "Mate, please, like Aegon will." The
listens
novelty will
to
wear
me.
off. He
Right.
still
He'll get
listens to me.
bored.
We'll get sick of this, and then we'll be able to steer this how we want. She is now doing what her father used to do to her. She's thinking about her own children as just pawns on a chessboard.
Yeah.
They're also all playing the blame game, like specifically at that small council meeting, but just throughout the episode, they'll just give each other livid looks. They're
There's
like,
no time
"Mistakes-
for amusement, Thailand.
Mistakes were made in the final hours of Viserys' life. You know, like this happened. It shouldn't have. You know, they all have a way to blame each other.
They're very like eyes
Yeah.
forward, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's not dwell on the past.
Exactly.
The flip side of this is the blacks, where we don't get as much palace intrigue as we do with the Greens, but we get a little, and we obviously see. I was intrigued by the fact that the two people kind of closest to Rhaenyra are Daemon and Rhaenys, both of whom at various points in their life thought that they might rule the land, right? So that obviously is going to inform. They're not long-term politicians or operators the way Larys and Otto are kind of like on the margins, and they accrue power by like moving people around. These two people both ride dragons, both have an incredible amount of power.
That armor.
Yeah, they both, and they are essentially the Air
Dynamite.
Force of the realm. And like at any given point, like they're basically like, oh, we could just go over there and light that place up if we wanted to. And now they're maybe underestimating Aemon and Vhagar. But at the same time, I thought it was cool the way they sort of propped up both the two of them, their relationship, and the way that they interacted with Rhaenyra. I mean, Rhaenys was more like, you got to understand, I lost a kid. She's going to be in mourning.
Who was that kid though? Daemon's wife.
Yeah.
Like I think we
And
can't.
Laenor.
Yeah,
she,
and Laenor.
she pushes the Laenor button too.
And that's,
Yeah.
I think that was impossible not to think about in that exchange. I think we cannot forget, because on the one hand, like it's interesting to me to hear you frame Daemon as Rhaenyra's closest ally, sure.
Right.
Rhaenys, I would describe as an incredibly reluctant ally for Rhaenyra. Like dating back to episode 2 of season 1, when she thinks she's there to provide counsel, and Rhaenyra receives it as the like lecture of that is the way of things.
But I think she's come around. I think the end of season 1, she's come around.
She's the last one to.
Yeah,
to
but I think
bow.
now she's in because she's very like pro Rhaenyra in this episode, and Rhaenyra is so significant in her absence in this episode, and she's like, let's not do anything until Rhaenyra is here.
So that's the thing that got her, was that like Rhaenyra seemed to be the one in the season 1 finale who was cautioning restraint, right? And so she kind of evokes that here when she's talking to Daemon about like the more vengeful path that other characters would take. It's like a good thing that Rhaenyra is not here to act in haste like you would.
Yeah.
But the history between all of those characters is so deeply fraught. Rhaenys blames Daemon for her daughter dying, period.
Yeah.
Rhaenys blames Daemon and Rhaenyra for her
Laenor.
son dying.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing that was so fascinating to like think back on now through the perspective of what happens in this episode is like back in episode 7 in season 1, Daemon and Rhaenyra are courting that response from people. We had so many questions about that at the time. Like, wait, you need the Valyrians as your fleet and your allies. Is it worth the collateral damage of them thinking that you were directly involved in their son's murder?
Right.
But one of the things that Daemon and Rhaenyra say to each other is like, they'll fear what we are capable of. They being the realm at large, not specifically.
Yeah.
Corrales and Rhaenys were sort of the collateral damage of that strategy. Think about that now through the lens of Blood and Cheese. How quickly is that group going to move, the Team Black going to move from, we want them to wonder what we're capable of, to like, oh, fuck, like, it's probably not a good thing if people think you're capable of this.
Of sawing off a toddler's head. Maybe not. Maybe not the move.
Okay, so we've covered Otto and Larys, we've covered Daemon and Rhaenyra. Remarkably, this episode hinges on the return and performance of a character who I think was like generally, like I would say, somewhat ridiculed or somewhat criticized last season. This Misaria.
Yeah.
And I actually was pretty into this appearance and the plot line of like,
I think a huge improvement.
yeah.
Doing the reverse little finger. The accent is getting increasingly moderated
Here's what
instead of
I was thinking
increasingly
about it,
extreme.
and this is what it is. Almost all the characters in this show are prisoners of whatever faction they're a part of. And within that prison have become kind of fanatical about like, this is the only way that this can be fought. Like we're gonna be on these two separate points and we're gonna collide.
Yeah.
And Misaria's just like, I'm just trying to get out of here. like this is.
I'm no longer in your thrall.
I
Go
am-
scheme with
yeah.
someone
Tough
else.
one for Damon to hear.
My
Like, my whole
occupation is
thing is
gossip.
people being in my thrall.
Are you sure about that? Have you seen my new armor?
But I loved
Mm-hmm.
her pragmatism and I loved her cynicism. I loved her just being like, yes,
like,
Damon,
what?
I was obviously playing both of you
Sure.
against the middle. Like,
Yeah.
that is literally
I
like my
profited
job
from
description.
knowing.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of this appearance and this specifically the scene between her, the scenes between her and Damon?
Not the scenes between her and Eric, your favorite Cargill.
I thought that was fine. Yeah, that was cool that he stuck up for her.
We got Eric and Arik in this episode.
Yeah.
Who could ask for anything
Yeah,
more?
but the Arik stretch was traumatizing because he was by a scorpion, and like anytime you see a scorpion now in
It's
the
dragon
Wider
time,
Thrones
yeah.
universe, you just think of Euron and bigger crossbow
might want to
and
get some,
Rhaegal, and it's like
his eyes tested
PTSD.
because he's like, look, oh no, dragon!
It took him a while to
it's
clock that was Rhaegar, easily the biggest dragon
the
in the
Swiss
realm.
cheese wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, it's got a lot of holes in it.
But Misaria.
Yeah, Misaria. No, I really loved this. I loved the discovery of her. I loved her like weariness. She's just like it is the opposite of Larys. She is an equal master of whispers. She is equally connected. She does hook him up with a rat catcher that he needs and all of that. But she's just not enjoying the game the way that most people who are playing the game are enjoying the game. And that is very, I mean, I guess a similar-ish comp would be Varys, because Varys loved the game, but towards the end on Game of Thrones, Varys is just sort of like, what on earth can I do to protect the realm?
Right.
And hers is just like, what on earth can I do to get out of here? I just don't want to be here anymore. And I really like that different energy.
And she also, like, Damon doesn't really have the power over her because she's just like, what, kill me, do
I
whatever.
mean, think of
Right.
the first time we see them together in season 1. Like, they're fucking in a brothel as people watch them through basically these exact
Oh, I remember, yeah.
screens that we have here.
is-
And then he's
yeah,
like,
we did get those.
can't
Yeah,
get it
yeah,
out,
yeah.
gotta cloak
Do we clean
myself.
them?
And yeah.
Oh.
She's like, you
That's where we got the cup.
writer of Correxes. So it's a totally just like utterly different dynamic. And there is actually kind of a steady evolution because there's the mid-season stretch where he's, after he takes Rhaenyra to the bowels of the pleasure den, an iconic moment in House of the Dragon history.
Yeah.
And he's passed out on her floor and she's just basically like, the I'm not in your thrall thing starts there, really. This is just
Yeah.
a more overt stating of it. And the Varys comp is an interesting one because, if we think back to the Dragonstone sequence when Damon is using her as like a chip to fuck
I'm gonna
around with
marry her
Viserys,
and have a kid
Yeah,
with
I stole
her.
an egg.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a family, and she's like, what is happening here? And the reason that I want to be a part of your life is for protection,
Yeah.
and you're actively putting me in harm's way and using me as a tool in your fucked up warped game. And so when she made her move with Otto in the penultimate episode of season 1 and did the whole, remember it was me who put him there about Aegon, but also like made her pitch for protecting the small folk.
Yeah.
I will just say, I think we all in real time thought it was one of the weaker moments of the season. This didn't feel that way. This brings you into that headspace where she's like, this was my life before. These are the horrors that I worked through. These are the people in power who have used me for ill. And I tried to make that work for me and now I'm done with it. But what actually happens here? Like you said, she does actually give him actionable intel. That was interesting too, because Damon does have knowledge of the
And connections.
of the passageways and
Yeah.
connections. He's the commander of the Gold Cloaks. That's why he's greeted by Blood. Like, hey, Commander, what's
Hey.
up?
Yeah, I was wondering
oh.
how he was like.
Damon back in his
pretty
signature
notable
murder
guy,
cloak.
yeah.
Wonderful
Blood, by the
stuff.
way, in the book has already been drummed out of the service. The Gold Cloaks in the
He's
show.
got he's got a little bit of a rap sheet there.
Yeah.
But, Damon left Rhaenyra in season 1 the little map of here's how you sneak out and make your way through Maegor's secret tunnels to go out on the town for a night with your uncle who's going to become your husband.
But I kind of
And
see,
so,
I see that Misaria might be a connection to a rat catcher. I'm not sure that
that's what I
Damon
like
would know a
about
rat
it. Is he had
catcher.
the fact that we know he actually is in possession of some of that information, but still had to seek out something he knows she possesses that he does not. That is a level of equilibrium in their relationship that was just missing previously.
The last thing I want to say on the Misaria front,
Sure.
I know you want to stay here with Misaria forever, but this
Sure.
is the last thing I have to say about this. Mal mentioned when we meet her in season 1, episode 1, I did go back and I'm just thinking about that scene. thinking about passage of time on the show and characters who have been with us from the beginning, like sure, Matt Smith has had different wigs, he got a haircut, blah, 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 but he looks like pretty much the
Matt
same.
Smith, yeah.
Matt Smith himself.
Yeah.
But like Damon got a haircut, grown his hair, etc. But he looks pretty much the same as he did when we first met him. Seeing Misaria sort of just like weary and bedraggled compared to like, crisp, and I was just like, oh my God, she
looked like someone who was living on a boat.
She was
hanging out with
She was so much younger when we first met her,
Time
decades
passes,
ago. Yeah.
Do you want us to, you're going to call us Blood and Cheese, do you want us to start calling you the White Worm?
Sure.
No,
You wouldn't be the first
Wolf of the North, I like for him.
Okay, let's just kind of open up a little bit here because we've talked about a bunch of the different major plot points. I don't want to get too into what we think is going to happen and get into predictive nature of it because, for one thing, we haven't seen the scenes from next week yet, so there's a sort of fool's errand in somewhat. Also, like, because of the nature of these books, the completeness of the history, and while there might be some surprises along the way, I don't want to get too into like, what do you think's going to happen with this guy? And you guys can just tell me. So I'm more curious whether or
Reliable
not
narrators of
Sometimes
Fire
we
and
don't
Blood.
know, yeah.
there was a scene in this episode that you thought was maybe sneaky important, maybe like more important than I would have thought. Like I was thinking about the Alan scene, which went on for quite a while. And I was like, well, I don't know this guy. They seem to be having a tender moment of exchanging a scepter and gratitude with each other.
The dagger he had made for Lucerys.
Oh, his dagger. Okay,
Yeah.
so
His would-be heir, the
heir.
Driftmark.
Yeah.
it was a longer
Sad.
scene than you would get.
Yeah, we had time to watch them like mop the blood off the deck of the.
That's right.
Is that your favorite part?
Chipping the barnacles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I was like, that's a lot of barnacles.
I like to see the details of how they maintain the fleet.
No, but I just love that they're already on chipping barnacles when the front half of the ship is just completely wrecked.
That was
and I was like, maybe
Corrales is like, I
basic
need
structure of
my
the ship.
ship out there so that I can be a part of leading the blockade.
Yeah.
And Alan's like, we sent 7 more ships out like earlier today. Can you chill?
Yeah.
But also, have you seen your ship? It's demolished.
So that seemed like a relatively important scene going forward.
Watch the space,
Watch
I
the
think is what we're
space.
going to say.
A new
about that.
character who was introduced.
Was there anything else from the episode that jumped out at you where you're like, oh, how about that? Ooh, how
I have
about
something
that?
for you.
Oh, sure.
We have Aegon's small council.
Yep.
He does not have a master of ships. They mention a name, Dalton Greyjoy.
Okay.
And I think it's okay for me to say this.
Red Kraken.
He's the Red Kraken. And I know how much you miss the crab feeder.
I do.
Are you excited that there's a character called the Red Kraken?
He'll have to do. What was that? The trifecta? What was
The
it called?
triarchy.
The triarchy. The alliance. Yeah, I miss the crowd. I miss that kind of like weird subplot.
Yeah.
It seems like this is going to be much more this side versus this
The
side.
Greyjoys. How do you feel about the Greyjoys possibly being back?
This is
We
a
got
great
some-
take
we
of
got
yours
some
that you
stacks.
missed the triarchy.
Yeah.
The crab feeder.
Yeah.
And the
He's like, take me back to the
incessant mentions
stepstones.
of the steps.
I thought it was cool. I love that part. Yes, I'm excited for the Greyjoys to be coming back if that is indeed in play. There was one other thing. Helena's premonitions.
Yeah.
Yes.
And her being like, I mean, that was actually one of my favorite little exchanges in the episode was like, I'm scared. And he's like, of what? And she's like, rats.
Yeah.
And he just goes, the queen remains an
It's an
enduring
enduring mystery, is she not?
Great line delivery.
But also right before that when he's like, where is he? Like, come on. Yeah.
Is Aegon perceptive enough to have noticed that his wife called that?
No.
Wife/sister. Let's just not
Wife/sister,
forget.
yeah.
So always bears mentioning wife/sister.
Is Aegon perceptive enough to notice anything about Helena? I would say no.
Definitely not, and I think like we have ample evidence at this point because her season 1 mini dream dispatches included he'll have to close an eye about
Aemon, the beast beneath the boards.
Beast beneath the boards about Rhaenys and the
Rhaenys.
dragon pit, and
Yeah.
of course the dragons of flesh weaving dragons of thread that we already discussed. So yeah, I don't think that we should expect Aegon to clock this, though I am interested in more broadly beyond Aegon, like the family unit's awareness of Helena's abilities.
Well, that's the thing. Is like
Viserys-
it would almost be good homework for the viewer to be like, listen to what Helena says.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Everything
that for
she
sure.
says, yes.
But like, just when we think about again, what is the story about? What is the Dance of the Dragons? It's the Targaryen War of Succession. It's a family civil war, right? And so like all of these people in theory have a proximity, a closeness, and awareness. In season 1, when we realized that Helena was a dreamer, we were so interested in thinking about and discussing whether Viserys, her father and the king, who was obsessed with the idea of being a dreamer,
What is the
had
power of a
ever-
dragon next to the power of prophecy? Yeah.
had ever spoken to his own child about that even once.
And I'm gonna go with no.
Probably not.
A little busy with the dropping.
It didn't
limbs,
feel
I
like
would
the
say.
answer was yes. Yeah, he's
Right.
like, half my face fell off.
Oops.
Like, my hands
Yeah.
got to go back in the Mellows maggot bowl. I don't have time to talk to you about your
God, that
prophecies.
sucks. I don't find out all about that.
You know, these divides and ruptures can stem from things like that. When Daemon and Rhaenyra have their absolutely harrowing fight in the season 1 finale, and he issues the line that we heard, it was our introduction to the whole series in the first teaser trailer for season 1, dreams didn't make us kings, dragons did.
Right.
Like, Daemon has a resentment of that. For Viserys, it could have been a bridge with one of his children. But these people don't talk to each other.
But that's what's so key about the Greens. And then they're constantly contrasting that with the Blacks and how Rhaenyra actually has a connection. Like, we get the funeral,
my God.
but like when
Jace
Jace comes
weeping in
in
her arms?
and he's trying to like give his dispatch and he's crying,
Yeah, right.
and she
That
just
was
like wraps him up in her. And like, we should say, not a lot of Rhaenyra in this episode, but
No.
Emma like doing so much with their face.
Fantastic.
Just incredible.
Yeah,
stuff.
great job.
The intercutting
The-
of Alicent at the Sept and Rhaenyra at the
Yeah.
funeral, the tie, we think back to the Sept in season 1, Alicent taking her there, right? It's only for you and the gods to know, explaining what it meant for her to be there and think back to
And
her
feel
own
closer
mother and
to
feel
her
close to
mother.
the people
Yeah,
that she had
yeah.
lost. That's the first person she lights a candle for here. She lights one for Viserys. She lights one for Luke. Like, it's a different, the handing over of the paper
She's
on the
also pressing
Dragonstone
the
Bridge.
small council. She's like, all right, let's get some new terms over to them. Let's figure this
Yeah,
out.
Yeah, and it's not going well so far.
Has she
everyone
responded
in
to
the
my-
small council room is happy.
sorry, your kid is dead.
I
I like
remember
that.
Orwell being
Did
like,
she ask
about
about
her
me?
dead,
Yeah,
her
did
she,
dead kid.
Did she leave me on red or what's happening?
Okay.
Yeah, like the contrast, not only the link that reminds us of their friendship and their shared history, but then the contrast of how either the parallels of like Otto is trying to work you, Daemon's trying to work you, they want to control you, but then the contrast of how they interact with their children was like really, really stark.
Yeah.
Stack. It's pronounced stack.
I realized the one thing that I forgot to ask you guys about.
Kristen and Alicent
It's-
fucking up a storm.
Well, that was pretty cool. But in
I'll say it, he's a complete hypocrite.
the title of this show is House of Dragons. I haven't asked about dragons.
Oh.
I've got some thoughts. Yeah.
We got 2 dragon dismounts in this episode.
A couple of
The
dragon
dragon dismount.
dismounts.
This was
The
a big one
VFX,
for
I
Yeah,
thought were
big
pretty
for
good.
me.
Is the amount of rest and relaxation that these dragons need in between flights going to become like a thing? Where they're
I think
just
it's
like,
more the amount of sheep that they
Yeah.
need to eat.
Gotta take a tenth of the sheep.
Yeah.
I like how much.
This
I
is
like
what
how
we say
much-
to the crew. We're like, we need a tenth of the snacks from out in the,
Yeah.
the pit stop.
Right,
Ready?
Mal needs to
so
rest
that we
and
can
gorge.
gorge as soon as we finish recording.
You should go to Sweetgreens and just like kind of keep it level. Like he doesn't need to.
No free ads.
That's true. Not
free ads.
free ads.
No free ads.
It was cool to see the dragons. I thought that the Vagar scene where it was just like, oh shit, and then it was like, no, that's our good dragon.
That's just
Yeah.
It was cool. Any dragon points you want me to know about?
Cyrax's mourning, like
Oh,
with
yeah, tough.
Rhaenyra.
Man.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm just gonna be honest. I know that the substance of my emotional response should have been Rhaenyra has found the cloak of her dead child, but I was like,
the wing that you
seeing Arax's wing, that was what really
I
hit
was
me.
like, this is probably gonna bum Mal out. But I was also more like, isn't it disturbing that these fishermen are like, oh no, we're dead?
But yeah, I think we're gonna
They
get a lot-
responded appropriately.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Seeing
get a
dragon
lot
fly
more
towards
like
them.
how the small folk are affected
Yeah.
by dragon warfare. Like, how does that affect everyone on the ground? It's not just going to be about salt and sheep and iron, but it's
Right.
going to be about that as
Right.
well. But also, I just want to float this to you because, as we know, in Fire and Blood, there's a bunch of different narrators, a bunch of different what ifs for
Shout out
various
Mushroom.
characters. So I just want to ask you.
Sliding doors moments. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We love Gwyneth Paltrow. We wish you were here. So, Luke, do you like the theory that the prince survived the fall, swam to safety,
Oh, this
lost
is
his
sick.
memory, and became a fisherman?
Oh, that's awesome.
No.
No.
Vagar ate him in one bite.
I really love this theory.
One
though.
bite.
I
Like
just,
a
I just want,
peanut M&M.
I want a future cameo for Luke just working the nets down at the shore in a future season.
It would be great if he just like set up a small gambling book in like a village somewhere and was doing like.
Carrying on Beesbury's legacy.
His
of
body,
taking-
his body was
taking the
never
action
found.
At the
He starts
tourney.
She says it's because he's inside Vagar's intestines. I would
In
say
the history of Game of Thrones, with the exception of what was the mom, and then she comes back, but it wasn't in
Catelyn.
the show. Catelyn.
Yeah.
Lady Stoneheart, yeah.
Like, is anyone ever actually alive when they're like, nobody, like, we didn't see Stannis get killed? It's like, yes, yes, you did.
The Hound.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Hound.
Remember that episode?
Vengeance.
Well, by this logic, Jaehaerys could be
Benjen, who
alive.
didn't have
right?
time to get on that horse.
We heard that happen.
There were a couple other like interesting, quick little dragon things. We mentioned already the scorpion, right? When Hugh is making his petition to Aegon about the cost of iron, it's to make scorpions. So like, there's a prep level happening.
All that detail was so cool. Like
amazing, yeah, and even like the way Aegon's like
guns.
the way they all talk about their dragons, because we had the kind of Daemon dragon math sequence of the season 1 finale. We have this many, they have this many, and Rhaenyra's
Love
like
dragon math.
hit pause and chill. I love Amy. Like this episode was so heavy, not the first one, but so heavy on Aemond Daemon parallels. They literally use the same language, toehold, to talk about why they need to get a seat in the Riverlands, get it, Harrenhal. And so, like, hearing Daemon say to Rhaenys, you have to come with me. Like, we need Caraxes and Meleys, let's head out together. I can't beat that hoary old bitch on my own.
Yeah.
The way that they're thinking about each other, we see in Aemon's room a painting of Valerian's attack on Harrenhal, like this obsession that Aemon
Is that
and
the
Daemon
kind of
share.
dragon mural you were
I
hoping
also have
for?
that in my room. No, I missed it. I do.
You missed the
dragon orgy
orgies.
tapestry is on our
that or
mind
Guernica?
always. On our mind always. So that's just
Starry Night. You know, one of those.
they're both second sons. They're these like formidable foes who are revered by others for their prowess in battle. Those comps are just always so interesting, and so like hearing them actually hearing again Daemon talk about Aemond in this episode was really fascinating. Because in the show we have heard Daemon compared to Maegor the Cruel before, right? He would be another Maegor, and Maegor is mentioned in this episode. Maegor's tunnels. Not sure if you've heard, Chris, but Cheese knows the shape of them better than his own cock.
That's a direct line from the book. Thank you, George.
Wonderful stuff to see that make it into
Glad
the
you got
show.
one more secret in there.
Thank you.
We
Me
wrapped
too.
up today.
One of the things that we got in the opening credits was Maegor impaled on the Iron Throne, a blade from the throne through his neck, which is how he died. There's a lot of speculation, like what really happened, another classic kind of unreliable narrator bit of history. But Maegor's the show constantly reminding us of Maegor and his history is just something that I love. Cragen mentioned Jaehaerys and Alicent and their dragons not wanting to go beyond the wall, which we talked about. A little bit of an update on book canon. Alicent is there writing letters to Jaehaerys about how her dragon, Silverwing, didn't want to fly there. It troubled me then, and it troubles me still. In Fire and Blood, Viserys' last night is spent telling his grandkids about Jaehaerys going up north to the wall.
Yeah.
One of the things that we don't see here is Vermax, Jace's dragon, up in the north with him. But he hates it. In the book, it is clear that he hates it. And like one of the things that we did get to see in Game of Thrones,
They don't like
and
it.
it did not go well, was what it's like for the dragons up north. And
Solar
so-
powered guys,
Not sure if you guys have heard of the Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
But there's something.
It's cool.
There's something there.
I'll leave it here. It's cool that we're in episode 1 of season 2, and like the connective tissue is sort of becoming so apparent, which I think for people who are more like Game of Thrones TV fans, that was like that's a nice thing when you're like now the stuff that I watched is starting to pay off in a little bit more of a significant way.
Can I just say one thing that I think is really funny is that like when people watch House of the Dragon and they're Game of Thrones fans and they're like, this is close to the show I love, but not quite the show I loved. And one of those things is that it looks different because it happened, over 100 years ago. The style, the costumes are different. Except for the Starks. They wear
guys,
the exact same
Identical.
thing
Identical.
over 100 years ago.
Those guys have been wearing American workwear.
It's working.
Braided leather,
It's working.
This was so much fun. We're going to be here every Sunday night right at the conclusion of House of the Dragon, so you can join us here on the Ringerverse YouTube page. You can listen to us on the House of our podcast feed on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can watch us on Spotify.
And you can watch us on Spotify. It's been awesome to hang out with you all. We'll talk to you next Sunday.
Bye.